You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
Hi, this is Del Morgado.
Hi, this is Tim Rose, who played Admiral Akbar in Return of the Jedi.
This is Kim Possible. Mandy Cowell here.
Hey everyone, it's Tammy Stronach from The Neverending Story.
This is Jeremy Taggart from the Taggart and Torrance podcast.
Hey, this is Loki Corn Cosplay.
Hey, I'm DJ Jenny Rock from Neil and Johnny Drink in the Park.
And I'm Neil Young from Neil and Johnny Drink in the Park. Johnny's best friend.
You're not my best friend.
You're my best friend.
Not.
Hello, this is Dr. Steve-O.
Hello, this is Andrew Chalmers, the writer and doctor in Doctor Who Dark Journey.
Hey, what's cracking, y'all? It's your boy J-Rock. You know, I'm Sierra Era Igra. You're listening to Droids Canada podcast.
Enjoy your chimichanga.
Warning. Listener discretion is advised.
That means there's a lot of fucking swearing.
Hello.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces.
They call this the hot seat.
The hot seat, I assume?
It hasn't even started yet.
No, we haven't even got started yet.
So let everyone know.
Here to warm it up for you.
Welcome to Buffalo. We're here at Nickel City Con. I am Dan and this is Todd. We are here with Droids Canada podcast. We are, of course, based out of Canada, and we talk about everything funny. Now today, over 100 credited Internet Movie Database titles. We have actor, we have musician, we have producer, and yoga enthusiast, James Duval.
Glad you did your homework. Hello, everybody. Yeah.
Wow. Homework is what it's all about.
So, yeah, you got to make sure you know what you're doing.
So,
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Exactly. So yeah, we're here today to talk to you about a lot of things that you've done throughout your career. The one thing that I really kind of spoke the most to me was at the beginning, doing the teenage apocalypse trilogy.
Yeah, the trilogy with Greg Rocky.
Oh, exactly. Now, those movies were, from 93 to 97, I believe they were. Now, those kind of dealt with a lot of topics that were extremely taboo back then. Now, how do you feel that would kind of portray in today's day and age, when a lot of the sex, the violence, the dealing with homosexuality, things like that were shunned back then are now accepted? How do you believe those would be portrayed if those were released today?
Well, that's a really good question, actually, because I think that, certainly after the movie in the 90s, Doom Generation, for instance, was banned out of England. And they eventually released us, but it was considered material and content that wasn't releasable at all into the public market. And as time's gone on, to be able to see like the kind of movies that were so kind of taboo and I think cutting edge for the time, these days it's just not really all that anymore to some degree. But it's an interesting question because we're also reaching a time of the whole reason he made these movies in the first place, where you could deal with the sex and the violence and the pansexuality and whatnot, but those became more acceptable as time has gone on. But we're seeing a resurgence of conservatism and non-tolerance and racism and sexism in this country that I think it wasn't even like this in the 50s with McCarthyism. You can't talk about anything anymore without someone being offended now. So what's interesting is like to put these movies back. There was a point where I was like, oh, well, these movies were banned 20 years ago, and now it's passé. But that's actually not true. I think in the last year or two, again, those movies have become offensive again. That subject matter has become taboo again.
So it has gone full circle to
It's gone full circle back to where we were.
Because now we're in the politically correct age.
That's exactly right. And what's not politically correct is deemed unwatchable, unusable.
But I do notice that there is more of a conversation now that is going on with the things that are not politically correct. People are able to discuss it and talk about it.
I think that's
before it was just hush hush.
Yeah, now the fact that we can have a dialogue, and that even though I think we live in a time and an age where there's a conflict between the two, there is certainly a contingent of people who are anti-censorship and are willing to open these discussions about these subjects. It's where everyone else is just kind of afraid and they don't want to talk about these things. You're not allowed to show them on television. In fact, The Simpsons and even, South Park, I think, predicted it 10 years ago. There's an episode of South Park where they're doing a Christmas play, but all of a sudden it was like, well, we're Jewish, so you can't have a Christmas tree. And so they can't have the Christmas tree, then they can't have Santa Claus, then they can't have Christmas music. And in the end, because someone's offended by something, everyone's dancing around in these white sheets like, whoa! And Mr. Garrison gets up and he's like, what the fuck is this shit? If you want to fucking celebrate Christmas, celebrate Christmas. If you want to celebrate Hanukkah, celebrate Hanukkah. What is wrong with the fact that we talk about these things? And he's right. And it was funny what I'm saying. We're laughing because it's absurd, but we live in this day and age now where people get offended by the stupidest fucking thing. Excuse my French.
Leave it to South Park to spew truth.
Well, even Family Guy got caught on that too.
Family Guy, Simpsons, they all think the Simpsons talked about Trump being president like 20 years ago, and what a nightmare that would be.
What was that video that was Trump going down the escalator, giving the wave, which was exactly the same as on a Simpsons episode?
He predicted a bunch of different things, though. It wasn't just that.
It's time travel.
Well, I think, and in that conversation, without getting too far off the subject, which is amazing, is the reason why they're predicting it is because they're actually making fun of a reality that's a truth that we all have to deal with. And they're making fun of it. It becomes satirical, it becomes a farce. But in that truth, the reason why it's predicting something is because there's something true in that. And you can kind of look at it and say, if we can let this person get away with behaving like this, imagine what's going to happen in a few years. We're going to end up making him president.
Very true. Very true.
So next,
no offense if you voted for him.
So next president of the United States, based on Simpsons, is going to be Lisa Simpson.
If we're lucky.
I believe the episode she had.
If we're lucky.
It's going to be The Rock. We're pretty confident on that one.
So with regard to the movie being banned, so it is not banned in England?
Not anymore. They banned it for a good 2-3 years because of the statue of the Virgin Mary and being used to rape Amy's character.
I think it was Germany. There was a punk rock act named Nina Hagen.
I remember.
And I believe she was banned.
Yeah, I remember her from Germany, the 70s and 80s. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But then it kind of became more accepted, and now it's not banned anymore.
That was the thing. Yeah, like everything. Like when you look back at the old early punk rock and the Sex Pistols, and they were banning their stuff, and you listen to it now, and because they said God Save the Queen, like they banned them for that.
So we have to wait until Nina Hagen goes full circle and gets banned again, just to see if it's going to.
That's kind of the interesting thing, which is about music and movies and everything that we find ourselves identifying with, this expression from other people and how we relate to each other is relating with these times. Like getting together. Like there's certainly when they ban not just Doom Generation but other types of subject matter, there's a collective group of people who are like, what the hell are you doing? Are you kidding me? And then you have the other people who's like, yeah, finally we have some decency. And I don't think there's any decency in denying
I really am worried
art to people.
I wonder how a lot of the 80s shows would have existed now. Like you had the shows like Married with Children. Do you think it would have survived this current age?
That's a good question. I think that, when it comes to stuff like Married with Children, I don't think that, what became like the biggest, you look at Married with Children, then you look, and when Married with Children was on, by the way, Roseanne was a big show.
Yeah.
And now that's a massive show that's come back. So it's kind of interesting. It's good. Everything we're talking about is full circle, like these cycles, these cyclical things.
They're trying to do jokes that they've done in the past, and now they're getting blowback because it's not acceptable. And that's where I'm like, well, if Married with Children came out nowadays, that show would never have made it. It would have been.
Well, it's too unpolitically correct, right? You can't. This is setting a bad example. We can't expect people from this country to think for themselves. That's weird.
Now, with your musical background, kind of leading on to that as well, Salt Lake City Punk, okay? John the Mod in Salt Lake City Punk. Now, that is also, a timepiece movie that set back in the 80s. What was it? They say the most conservative city in America. Growing up punk rock in that. Now, how was it filming on that set? Touching on to something as well, being a more comedic kind of movie, but that whole fish out of water. This isn't how things are supposed to be. Similar, in a more funny fashion than the trilogy.
You know, I had blast making that because I'd worked with that director, James Ferrandino, already, and the writer-director, and that script is loosely based on his experiences. So when we were filming the movie in Salt Lake City, we were with him. You know, so he would take us to the places and tell us the stories, but also the other ideas is like, that's where you would find punk rock, exactly, in the most conservative place in the country. You're going to find these people who just, more than any other place, are going to rebel against it because they're completely, literally have a foot down. You can't listen to this, you can't talk. So what they're doing is they're literally stabbing that foot. And so punk rock actually has, and still does, this little kind of subculture in Salt Lake City because of that repression. It's a direct reaction to that repression, like, oh, you want to keep me chained? Fuck you! And it's like that punk rock kind of energy that Salt Lake City does still have. Because I went back and shot the sequel, Punk's Dead, a couple of years back.
We were talking about that the other night.
Yeah, we were talking about that, and I was wondering how it was to revive that role that you did 17 years after.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, actually, because, you know, I was the mod who got along with everybody originally. Mm-hmm. And, like, we all have friends who grow up and they evolve and change. Like, I knew one guy in high school, he was John Lennon in Peace, and then he joined the Marines, and he's like, kill! Didn't like the Beatles anymore. So people,
if everyone could go back to their high school days, I literally had purple hair. It was this long, playing drums in an alternative band, thinking we're grunge. And,
alternative, really?
Oh God, yeah, straight as alternative. It was fun. We were.
You're your dad now. I don't see it whatsoever.
We were original geek rock. You know, back when like Sloan and Weezer just started.
Well, that's the thing, and you look back and you kind of go, oh my God, I was that person, listen to that. So
I see my wife look at me and say, I wouldn't probably have talked to you. Like, then
I think that,
you're a little scared.
That's part of the idea behind Punk's Dead. I mean, it could be like original SLC Punk because it's set in a different time. Mm-hmm. But in that sense, you can see the characters still rebelling and still trying to find their individuality. So it was fun playing a character who got along and loved everybody in the original, only to grow up and get into Norwegian black metal because it's the only thing he felt be a lasting, real, true movement he could bring to Salt Lake. And instead of loving everybody, now he hates everybody.
What's the thing said about Norwegian death metal? The forest rangers, every one of their calls are finding a band that's gotten lost taking photos. Yeah, Norwegian.
Looking for that old church to set on fire. You know that happened like 1 billion years ago.
So let's just shake it up a little bit. What about Independence Day? We had the sequel come out, what, a year ago, 2 years ago? Resurgence. In my opinion, I'll just say it is nowhere near as great as the first one.
Yeah.
Nowhere near. I don't know what happened.
Well, I know there was another script with Will Smith and myself in it.
Yeah.
I was in the original script. And Will, to be honest, what it was, the original script still had Will Smith and his son who's a pilot.
Right.
When you get to the new movie, you just need his son as a pilot. But what a lot of people don't know is a year before that, After Earth came out, about Will's son, Will Smith and his son. Yeah. And it was panned. It was his first massive, failure, actually. And he kind of took a mental beating for that, I believe. I could be, misquoting. I'm not quoting him, but this is just what I assume, that it was a little tough on him. So when they came to him, and part of it was the timing, they said, we want to do a sequel to Independence Day. And this is the story. It's like, oh, father-son story? Yeah. I just did that. I'm not doing that again. No. And so he was out. He just didn't want to do another father-son story. And I think it could have still worked, but they ended up just reworking the script. I do know for a fact the studio didn't want any of us to come back.
Really?
None of us. They wanted all new characters. Yeah. They didn't want any of us. And they got their wish. Half of us didn't come back. Half of us just disappeared.
It makes you wonder if maybe they were...
And then they killed everyone off. Vivica Fox. They killed off Bill Pullman. They killed him.
Yeah.
You can't kill off
there was such a success with that
mixture. You can't kill Luke Skywalker. Stop it.
Yeah.
There was such a success with that mixture of characters that you had in the first one, though. You wouldn't want to
that's the thing, and I think
a little bit of that back.
I love those guys dearly, and I really think that they're amazing filmmakers. I don't, because I just wasn't involved on any level on an Independence Day sequel. I couldn't explain why it went in that direction.
Yeah. Well, to me, when I look at it, because introducing new characters is normally the first step to start building a new hierarchy of movies. and maybe they thought, if this film does good, maybe we'll start rolling out more.
I mean, that's my opinion. And again, it's just an opinion, and like I said, it's not a reflection on these people who gave me my first big break that I actually do love dearly. They're wonderful people. But it does seem like, at least, because I went opening night, I was all guns, go you guys, and I don't care if I'm not in it. I didn't die. I'm still making movies. And when I finished watching it, I was glad I wasn't in it.
So then, working with Randy Quaid.
Yeah.
Well, Randy was not crazy back then.
I mean, is he crazy today?
I don't think he is. No.
I think it's just a thing he's
doing.
He's
just enjoying things. Just relaxing.
Yeah, he may be just, I mean, I'm not sure, but I just know that he's not nuts. At least not my experiences with him. That being said, I haven't seen him since the 90s. But I never got that impression from him. And even when I saw the videos that he was putting on YouTube where he's acting nuts, I'm like, he's in character. I mean, it just, to me, he's in character.
Sometimes that works out, though. Even, what was it, Hasselhoff did that burger video.
Cousin Eddie.
You guys
being Cousin Eddie.
Resurgence. Yeah, Cousin Eddie, yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Rupert, if you're gonna fuck me, then I'm gonna fuck you. That's Cousin Eddie.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You just don't watch the second one. I accidentally seen it. Don't.
Yeah. So I mean that's the basic gist of it. I went and watched it, and I was like, it just felt like, to me, that the whole movie was not. It was a movie that was to set up another movie.
Sure.
But we already had the original that should set you up for what this was supposed to be. So,
Yeah. Well,
at the end of it, I'm like, no comment. I love those guys, no comment.
You have, like Dan said, you have over 100 movies credited to your name, which is just amazing. Probably one of the first people. I think he's got the most we've ever talked to, Dan.
Yeah.
But you've also been a part of 3 iconic films: Independence Day, Donnie Darko, of course, Donnie Darko, which I bet you get millions of questions about that movie all the time. But then, what about Gone in 60 Seconds? What about that film? Was it
film
fun?
was awesome.
Yeah, that movie was probably one of the. To me, it felt like it started the resurgence back into car movies, and then we had the Fast and Furious franchise just literally take over everything.
They really did, and when we did the Gone in 60 Seconds, which is of course a remake, it was just,
for sure.
I mean, I had gotten involved because I just said, give me in a movie with Nicolas Cage.
Why not?
He's in this movie in Gone in 60 Seconds. I'm like, perfect.
Did you get any of the Nicolas Cage looks?
He was awesome, actually.
Really?
Yeah,
really?
I loved working with him tremendously. Very fun to work with. Amazing actor to watch and work with. And the whole experience with him and Robert Duval and Angelina Jolie and Delroy Lindo and Timothy Oliphant. I mean, it's got, so many incredible actors and actresses in that movie.
That movie, it made it seem, it was fun. It was action, it was storyline, it was also fun. And it's kind of like how Fast and the Furious makes you want to drive fast. That made you want to steal a car.
It was a lot of fun
to steal a car.
What was weird is I remember going into audition, and I didn't want to audition for Fast and the Furious for the very first one. So I'm like, I just did a car movie, and they're like, well, go in for Fast and Furious, they want to see you. So I go in and fuck this director, whoever fucking directed that, fuck him. I hope this on video, loser. So I go into his fucking audition, and he's like, oh, you're in Gone in 60 Seconds? Well, that's just one strike against you. It's like, what are you, fucking blind, man? It's on my resume. Why did you call me in if you didn't want to see me because I was in the movie? When I walk in, you say that to me. Wow. You're an asshole. That's what you are.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad his movies did well. I fucking hope I was like, I hope your movie fucking fails. Become this massive hit. And you know what? Good for him. I still, because of that, don't watch him.
Really?
Don't like him. And I fucking hate that dude. Public knowledge. Forget my French. I mean, I have I don't like the guy. Don't like people in the business like that. I think they represent the worst of it.
Well, their franchise didn't do so hot at the beginning. I mean, you had the first one, then you had the second one.
That's when they were both car racing.
And they're like, how do we save this? Quickly bring The Rock to the show. And now it's the best thing in the world because The Rock's the hottest.
Well, I mean, they got a lot of good actors and a lot of good action sequences, and it's just a whole different thing. But for me, it was more of the professionalism of walking into a room and just behaving that way.
I would just try.
And it's if that's how you are, dude, I don't want to know what you're like on set.
Sure.
Someone else can pick up your poop and throw it away because I don't want it.
What I'm trying to understand though is that why was that a strike? If anything, that should have been a plus. He's already been a part of a great film.
I'm like, which is fine. I don't care whether for me when I go in, I don't care whether you like the movie that I did or not. I'm like, you're calling me in. are you here to insult me, or do you really want? Because if you're wasting my time, you shouldn't have called me in. You're wasting your time and my time.
Yeah.
And you called me in just to insult me. That makes you a weirdo. Who goes out of their way to insult people? Like, I don't know about you guys, but my life's too. I'd rather go do things that are fun and be happy than do things like be miserable and go make someone else miserable.
That's how I live my life. I call it ice cream cones and puppy dog tails.
That's what it should be.
Makes me happy.
Sure.
Yeah. And honestly, everybody, that's the key to life, really. Like, doesn't matter what you do or who you're with, you just have to be enjoying the quality of your life and who you're with and what you do. If you don't like what you do or who you're with, you don't hang out with them or you don't do that job anymore. So that being said, when you go into a job interview, like a movie or whatever it is, and they're like already bitter, trust me, you do not want to work with it, because you're going to have to sit with that for 3 months or whatever.
Right.
12, 14 hours a day. Well, I'm not here to babysit someone who has a bad attitude who didn't learn that in high school or whatever.
So now that brings us up to Donnie Darko, where the bunny.
The bunny. Did Nicolas Cage make that joke at you from Con Air? Put down the bunny.
When we did Gone in 60 Seconds, it was before Donnie Darko, believe it or not, so it hadn't come out. Like, by the time Gone in 60 Seconds premiered in April or May of 2000, I hadn't shot Donnie Darko yet. I shot it.
We were trying to get our timeline to see what was first, Con Air, Donnie Darko.
Yeah.
What was it?
Con Air came out in like 90, like 5-6 years before that, actually.
Mm-hmm. So now, was that your first kind of like moving in towards some of the horror movies? Because I've noticed on your list of everything you've done, you have so many different genres of films.
Yeah, which I'm proud of. I'd like to think instead of like, do you do horror, do you do sci-fi, like, what do you got? I do comedy, I do romance, I do sci-fi, I do horror, I do musicals.
Yeah, and now we're really noticing a lot of the horror titles that you have. Now,
first one was a movie in '97 in Canada that wasn't a big movie. It was with Margot Kidder, who, God bless her soul, just passed away, and Christopher Plummer. It was a movie called The Clown at Midnight. And it's about this murderous operatic clown.
That still sounds very interesting.
You don't know if I'm a murderer or not because I dress up as the clown.
Now, how do you feel that today there seems to be a lot of the ball's really rolling on horror, and the horror genre is kind of having a really, really good resurgence. Do you see this happening?
Oh yeah, I think it's been happening for quite a few years now. It's for a while I thought the horror genre got a little confused there for a minute though. Yeah. They couldn't figure out whether they were being torture porn or like psychological horror.
It's so true.
You did have that. And then, like the big thing also is like found film, found footage.
Oh, the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, people are still coming to me like, I got this found footage. I'm like, leave the found footage.
Leave the town, buddy.
Write a
one with the videotape where if you watch it, you die.
Oh, that was
The Ring.
The Ring, The Ring.
There's a few. There's another one that had something to do like that too. But I like that it got inventive and creative. Of course, like everything else, or the superhero movies, whenever something hits and becomes big, you're going to have some really good movies because everyone's making them then. So you're going to have some really good ones, you're going to have some really bad ones because of that. Mm-hmm. So for example, there's a company called Asylum that does cheap knockoffs, and they make a lot of money doing it. Huh. So for example, and I did a movie with them. When they did the 2 Hercules, I did like the 3rd cheap Hercules. So when they did Transformers, this company does Transmorphers.
Oh wow!
So it's a purposely bad ripoff.
So yeah, it's the bad ripoff.
So what they do is like in this company, and it's not the only one. These people look at because they can sell it in pre-sales internationally, and they look at what's being made and what's huge, and they just carbon copy it, purposely bad.
Kind of like the Scary Movie.
Well, kind of a scary movie, although the Scary Movie is done by the studio. I can tell you, for example, that what company did this. They're the company that's responsible for Sharknado.
Are they at 6 or 7?
Yeah, they're at 6 or 7. It's unbelievable how successful they've become making these, honestly, these schlock films. Well, I'll never work with them again because it was just,
you can sit back and just watch and just laugh and enjoy it. These are so hilarious. What is it, the IFC station that we have up in Canada? They'll play things like avalanche sharks, like sharks that are prehistoric and pop up out of the snow on a ski resort, of course during spring break, eating people.
Well, that's the thing. So now that horror is big, and then we already have Sharknado, which I don't know if you guys like that or not, but I'm sure everybody, you know, I should speak for all of us, when it first came out, we're like, shark what?
Yeah.
And so now you have people ripping off the rip-offs going, well, if you have Sharknado, what if we get like these jellyfish?
Let's get sand sharks.
Rain. And
we'll play it on Shark Week.
And it's like taking an idea that's making fun of something and making fun of that to where it's now full circle and not funny anymore. It's just really trying way too hard to be different, and everything's a rip-off.
But what's fun about that franchise is it brings people who have kind of stepped away from the limelight a little bit, kind of bringing them back a little bit. You know, just to see what they're still doing, you know, like
Ian Ziering,
You know, what is it? Sugar Ray's in one of them.
What?
Mark McGrath, yeah, he's in, I think.
And then what's her name? Tara.
Didn't they kill?
Yeah.
Didn't they kill George R.R. Martin in one of them? Oh no, he was in Z Nation.
Z Nation.
Yeah, he was in Z Nation. I think it's interesting to me because in the 80s you had all those horror films, how cheesy they were, but they were still fun to watch.
Well, those are the things, like, I grew up, like, for me, those are my formative years. So the original Dawn of the Dead, the original Day of the Dead, the original The Fog, the original The Halloween, the original Friday the 13th. Those, when I was a child, you know, I'm 45 now, so when I was growing up, those were the only horror movies that existed. And they were frightening for me. It was like, oh my God, it's like pizza the brains, and it's coming out of his head, and he put his head, and he ate it.
Well, because then at that time you had practical special effects, and they actually had to do all the work and make the bodies and everything. Now it's like
Evil Dead. There's a perfect example. When did that come out? 81, 82. It was banned.
Yeah.
Because people were like, you can't show this material. This content's unwatched. It's rated X, and it did. It got a rated X.
Wow. Is there even such thing as a rated X anymore?
I don't think
NC-17.
Oh, it's
and rated X became NC-17.
Wow.
So X wasn't necessarily pornographic. It was like you couldn't even watch this with an adult. You had to be over 17.
Wow. Was the
so it was either porn, it was either sexuality or violence that was over the top.
The underground when we were young, you know, you had the VHS, you know, dubbed copy.
Oh, the tape traders.
Faces of Death.
Oh, I remember that. Faces of Death too.
From everywhere. It's so horrible. It'll make you sick.
It was a rite of passage. You know, you couldn't like really be accepted in the
Everyone
6th grade class unless you've seen Faces
an
of
old
Death.
tape of it that's been passed around. And yeah, like you said, the rite of passage, and it did make me sick.
Did you feel that the remakes of like Nightmare on Elm Street and Jason, do you think they live up to the originals at all?
Didn't watch them.
Oh, good call.
Honestly, I mean, and I have a friend. I have friends in both of them, but I just didn't watch it. Sometimes they do remakes and they're good, but for me, you know, like I'll say for example, there's a movie that came out in Sweden called Let the Right One In, vampire movie about to throw. I never watched the remake because the original one's so incredible that there was no point in watching it for me. Even I heard it's good. Yeah. Same thing with The Old Boy, but the original Korean movie, The Old Boy, is one of the most disturbing movies I ever saw. And I remember finishing watching it, and I just was like, oh, I'm so glad I watched that. I could never watch that again.
Like The Old Boy.
And then my friend comes over and knocks on the door. He's like, Jimmy, what are you doing? I'm like, you need to come in here and you need to watch this movie.
Right now.
And I watched it again. Yeah, like I was just and watched it the second time. And then it's one of my favorite movies now.
That whole scene, the hallway scene, so different in the new one. Like the original is so much better. It's just like, should we try to recapture the scene? Like, I don't think it's.
Yeah, the thing is, when you do a remake, is you've seen it already, even if they reinvent it kind of somehow. And so if something's made really well originally, and you redo it, it's just a remake. It's you think about the original, you're not thinking about what you're watching anymore. So I didn't see the sequel to Donnie Darko, but I know that the director was angry that they made that because they didn't want people looking at Donnie Darko differently because of that movie.
Yeah,
nobody wants another Police Academy. That's what it comes down to. Now, with like we're touching base earlier about the all the different genres that you've been in. Now, if you have one specific genre of movies, that's the only genre you can work in for the rest of your film career, what would that be?
That's a tough question, but it probably would be comedy. Because I have a blast being ridiculous. Although, when I was making Sushi Girl, and it's a pretty heavy movie and like violent and whatnot. I was making jokes in between.
That's what we noticed doing our show. Like we have our funniest things when we're not recording. Yeah. Just like the group that we're with is just a bunch of malarkey. Yes, I actually said malarkey.
Well, that's the thing, when you're doing a comedy, is how ridiculous can you get? How much more fun can you have?
So, how do you juggle your time then with music as well as...
acting comes... I mean, I grew up playing classical piano, and I own a bunch of guitars and a keyboard and music at home. So, because I have it at home, when I'm not working, I play every day. So, if I'm working, I just don't, it comes second.
Mm-hmm. Now,
but only in the sense that I'm surrounded by it at my house, so I'm always playing music no matter what.
So, with the exception of, making movies and whatnot, what is your true passion? We're getting deep.
Yeah, you can see that. We're getting into a very deep conversation.
I'll tell you what my true passion is, man. It's living, man. L-I-V-I-N. It is, because the great thing about being an actor, and it doesn't just have to be an actor. You can do this in whatever your job is in life, but, your thing is to observe what's going on around you and the relationships that people have. And so with that in mind, it's like your responsibility as a human being is what can you bring to the table that you can share with people. And the best way you can have it, because I don't work all the time in that sense either. So it's like when you're not working, what do? It's like, well, do all the things that you love, play music, go hiking. I mean, my other thing is like when I'm not working, I just want to hang out with my puppy and binge watch television. Like Westworld, damn, that show's so good.
Right? I still haven't watched last weekend's episode yet.
Woo!
Oh boy.
I don't know if you guys watch Westworld.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
No spoilers. Just amazing.
So then, now I have a question for you about taglines. I've written down some of the taglines of some of the movies that you've been in. Murder, Mayhem, and Pink Socks.
Yeah, that's got to be spreading darkness.
Yes. We have a road murder sex comedy.
Ooh. Is that Doom Generation?
Yes. It's like Clueless with nipple rings.
Nowhere.
It's scum rock, not punk rock.
Scum rock.
Revenge is a dish best served raw.
Sushi.
Now,
that's
wow. Look at that. That was pretty good.
They all had.
I didn't know we should have made like a game show or something.
You have some of the greatest taglines in movies. You pick movies based on the tagline because literally these are some great. Like the one that I left out was the lock your car or it will be gone in 60 seconds. I just need the Horatio scream out.
I used to like that. I used to like signing that on the autographs. Like, how fast is 60 seconds? Time's up.
Well, we got about 10 minutes left here, guys. If you have any questions for James, please come up to the microphone and ask your question. He's more than happy. If not, we're going to keep talking. I'm good at talking. So.
Don't be shy. Don't be
shy. Come on.
Unless you want me to.
I feel like I'm reenacting.
No.
Oh.
Come on up.
Let's think for a minute. Man, those Gregor Racky films are pretty bizarre, man.
Oh, man.
That's pretty bizarre films. Donnie Darko. So,
okay.
The cinematography in that film, I think, doesn't get discussed, quote unquote.
Even posters, cinematography is absolutely beautiful. And I agree.
Isn't that just the presence of kind of like the darkness or something, like the darkness meeting kind of like.
I really enjoyed working with that DP a lot, actually, I have to say.
The presentation or something, the best way to describe it. You enjoyed working with the
Stephen, the DP, and on the movie itself. But what's great is you don't always. I mean, you hope to see this, but it was a very collaborative effort between Stephen, the DP, and Richard, the director. And so to be right there as it's kind of happening.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, did they direct you to perform your scenes?
Yeah and no. I mean, I don't want to take the mystery or the. I think there's certainly an allusion to Frank that is larger than life, but it was, to be honest, it's the easiest job I ever had. I mean, they did direct me, but it was more like I added all the voice 6 months after we shot it, because I have a mouth one, so it's going like this, right? The world will end in 28 days. God bless Jake memorizing to wait till I finish mumbling and going, I think this is the line, because you couldn't really hear me through the mask.
Right.
So most of the direction was literally like I'd sit up, and then Stephen would go, Jimmy, take a half step to the left, a little bit too much, back to the right a little bit, all right? And And then Richard would go, all right, Jimmy, turn your head to the left. Look straight. Look right. Look straight. Look up. Look straight. Perfect cut. It's like, man, that's like the easiest job I ever had in my life. Not lying. I was like, that's like awesome. I don't have to do hair and makeup. I just show up and wait and then get in the suit and then right before they're ready for me, walk on the set. Then when they're done, everybody has to get washed off. I just go, zip. All right. Hi, guys. And it was, you know, and then we didn't know what the voice was going to be. So when I showed up 6 months later into the sound booth, we were kind of just playing with the cadence of how we spoke. And Rich and I together came up with that 28 days, 6 hours, 40, you know, so we, you know, it was just, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just kind of finding it as we were doing it.
Called classic.
One more question.
Sure. Sorry to get all heavy on you all.
I follow the writer Dennis Cooper's blog. And
Love Dennis.
He had a James Duval day, and it was this, you know how he had a blog all dedicated. The whole day was like interviews with you, video clips, pictures.
Wow, I would love to sit down. I really, you know, to work with Dennis and the slight moments that I got to spend with him was really, for me, like a highlight for me.
He's a great writer.
He really is. And I remember at one point I'd seen him again and he was hanging out with Christian Bale when Christian Bale was doing research for American Psycho. And all I could think is like, Christian, you couldn't be with a better person for American Psycho than Dennis Cooper. I mean, this is like why his character, you know, not just why, because he's a phenomenal actor, but, you know, that's what I call proper homework.
Right. But I mean, based on that and your early Iraqi films, you've become somewhat of a gay icon in the LGBT community, and especially like back in the 80s, before the whole wave came with marriage and everything. And so
yeah, we were doing it when it was not cool to do it.
So can you talk about like your, you know, like, face in the gay community and how, you know, you operate in that in terms of, I don't know, just the braveness and stuff, some of the roles you picked early on in your career and how?
Well, I mean, for me, it was kind of a fascinating journey because I always felt like I wasn't accepted and I never belonged. And it wasn't until I kind of did those movies with Greg for the first time, like I was embraced for just being me, truly. And that's a magical feeling. At the same time, it's kind of interesting because it was a very brief thing for me in the sense that it was nice to be a part of this movement that kicked off, but that's kind of all it was. You know, I think by the mid to late 90s, I was already like in the background.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Last question. This guy's hand up.
When you were doing Donnie Darko, two-parter. One, is there any sort of sense or feeling that people wouldn't get it when it came out? And two, is there anything unique to your interpretation of the ending being on the inside that you kind of think that everybody might not?
That's a good question. Those are good questions. I didn't necessarily think that people wouldn't get it. I mean, I thought actually, to be honest, if I'm going to be completely honest, I thought everybody would get it to a degree. I thought of it like, when I read it, I thought, this is exactly what I thought. I'm like, wow, this is like a Twilight Zone episode, but a movie. And I love the Twilight Zone. So right there I thought, because Twilight Zone is such a transgenerational thing, you know, it's cross, that people would look at Donnie Darko like Twilight Zone, and I was really mistaken by that. I love the story. I loved I had to read it literally 10 times to make sense of it. Like I did, because I had to audition when I got the part. I was like, I keep reading it, going back, and it's really hard to understand. But after I read it over and over and over, it started to make sense to me. So by the time I went and auditioned, I knew what it was about. I mean, at least to me, which is what the end ties into. So I kind of always felt, at least to me, there were two things happening, if this could make sense to you. Because you could say, well, Frank was there, and Frank is just his sister's boyfriend. He's not a supernatural character. He dies in his Halloween costume when he gets shot in the alternate reality. So he manifests in his Halloween costume.
Right.
But yeah, that being said, in the end, I felt that, you know, what it was is, I'm going to sound like Patrick Swayze from the movie, but the movie's about love. and the understanding of love. So why would Frank take him out only to put him back? Because that's what I thought. So Frank stops him and pulls him out from the bed. Well, he pulls him out from the bed only to put him back to die in the bed 28 days later, or back in time, if you will, to give Donnie a chance to experience love. You know, before that, he's just like, he just wants to have sex with Christine Applegate. He just want to fuck Christine Applegate. You know, and it's his hormones. He's this teenage kid. But with Gretchen and the strange relationship that develops, and her father trying to kill her and her mom, and actually finding out that he cares for her on a human level that's beyond, hormones or sexuality, so much so that he's willing to give his life to bring not only her back, but her mom. And I mean, the guy's basically it's like Jesus Christ in a way. He's sacrificing himself to save not just the world, the universe. Because the whole universe is about to implode. And so I thought that ending was like pretty heavy. And that I, because I read it so many times, I'm like, oh yeah, people will totally get this. I thought people would understand the movie, hook, line, sinker, but that's not what happened. But I always felt that the ending kind of explained it. He did this for Donnie, so Donnie could experience these things. Stop, why are you doing that? I'm in a panel, don't you know?
Well, that's actually coming close to the time
of
the panel, so I think
you're here all weekend, right?
Yep, that's right, I'll be here all week.
Come hang out with him all weekend. We'll be here tomorrow as well, so we're going to come by and hang out with you again, I'm sure.
Most definitely. Now, I'd just like to end on one thing with you. And that is a quote from the Internet Movie Database. Quote that you have said, which is, I try to live life instinctively, and I guess I've always enjoyed living in a fantasy world, daydreaming. Dreaming and fantasies are very important to the human and the soul. That's why I want to act. That kind of speaks to everyone who comes to Comic-Cons, to all of the different genres and cultures. And
fans, to cosplayers, to... That's what we all do that, and we all do that in our everyday lives. When I was a kid, I used to take this jump rope, and then I took this little statue of a cat my mom had, some plastic hat, and all of a sudden, that was the idol from Raiders of the Lost Ark. And whoosh, that was my whip. I'm going to grab that, I'm running away to run over, it's not there.
That's amazing.
I was doing this, hanging off my roof, and that's the end of the cave.
That's awesome.
No, I just want to say thank you for your positivity.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming to Buffalo Nickel City Comic Con, and everyone, James Duval.
Wow, thanks everyone for coming out. I'm flattered.
This podcast is a proud member of the Points of Interest Podcast Network. Visit us today at poipodcast.com.